Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I am Adebola Adeduba. The headlines. Okpebholo declared winner of Edo APC governorship primary election as former NBA President Olumide Akpata gets Labour Party's ticket. Pressure mounts on President Macky Sall to confirm election date. United Nations says horrific human rights violations amount to war crimes in Sudan. And details shortly. News Central now at this hour begins with stories from the governorship party primaries in Edo State, Nigeria. Former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Olumide Akpata, has clinched the Labour Party ticket for September 2024 governorship election in Edo State. He scored 316 votes to win the exercise held at the Bishop Kelly Pastoral Centre, Airport Road in Benin City, Edo State capital. Abia State Deputy Governor Ikechukwu Emeta, who is also the returning officer for the primary, declared Akpata as the winner. Akpata's victory comes months after he declared interest in the Edo State governorship race under the Labour Party. Let's also tell you that Senator Monday Okpebholo has been declared winner of the All Progressives Congress governorship primaries in Edo State, and he polled 12,433 votes to defeat 11 other aspirants who contested the rerun election, which was initiated after the first contestant was declared inconclusive by the leadership of the ruling party. The senator was one of the three winners that emerged from last Saturday's cancelled shadow poll. The final outcome of the exercise was announced officially in Benin by the new chairman of the election committee and governor of Cross River State, Basi Otu, following collation of results from the 18 local government areas. Away from that, let's now head to Ondo State, South Nigeria, where the funeral ceremony for the late governor of Ondo State in southwest Nigeria, Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, has continued with a church service held today in his hometown, Owo. After the funeral service holding at St. Andrew's Church in Mola Street, Owo, the late Akeredolu will be laid to rest at the burial site. On Saturday, February 24, 2024, there will be a friendly football match at Akure Township Stadium at 3 p.m. in his memory. And I'm being joined live on the news by our correspondent, Bernard Akede, who is presently in Ondo State. Bernard, good evening. Glad to have you join me. Bernard, can you hear me? Well, I believe we'll try to connect with Bernard in the course of the news bulletin. Now let's head to another news item where Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has defended his administration's reforms, saying there is no going back. Tinubu on his inauguration declared an end to the fuel subsidy regime and later floated the naira alongside a slew of other reforms. The moves have triggered a hike in the cost of living in Nigeria as the country's currency lost its value. Despite the criticisms and protests that have greeted reforms by Tinubu's government, the president said he is not backing down. He has repeatedly called for patience to allow his reforms to take effect, saying they will help attract foreign investment, but the measures have hit Nigerians hard. Tinubu reaffirmed his commitment to creating an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. Earlier, Najib Bello, business consultant, multipreneur, spoke to us on these developments.
About his economic policies, if really these are policies, by the way, these are just random thoughts that he throws out once in a while, not economic policies. I can't see anything that shows strategy or shows any form of diligence in what they are implementing regarding the economy. From the very first moment he was sworn in as president, he made the very terrible mistake of removing fuel subsidy which is supposed to be removed eventually. But as a president, you get into office, you take a couple of weeks, study the situation, know that the refineries are not working, know that 40% of our forex use every day is for importation of petroleum products. When you know this, then you can easily formulate a policy on when to remove fuel subsidy, how to remove it, and the way it would gradually be implemented to make sure we don't get into the disaster that we are in today. So it's terrible. Everything is wrong. You can feel it. The thing is, he doesn't listen. And this thing he's saying that he's not going back, he's not backing down, is to show that he doesn't listen. And he's failing in his number one job as the president. The president is not a dictator. The president is presiding over Nigeria. That is why he is called the president. He's not the overlord. He's not the king of Nigeria. So when people tell him that his policies are not working, he should listen and know how to address them, know how to re-engineer them. Right now, Nigeria is paying subsidy through the back door. And he knows this.
And now let's connect with Bernard, who is in Ondo State, on the death of the late Governor Rotimi Akeredolu. Bernard, good evening. Glad to have you join me. Bernard, can you hear me? Okay, seems we're having audio challenge with our correspondent, Bernard Akede. Bernard, you could try again to unmute or work on your audio. We'll try to connect with you in the course of the news bulletin. And now moving on to another news item. President Bola Tinubu has tasked permanent secretaries to redouble their efforts in ensuring citizens reap the dividends of democracy and benefit from government's renewed hope agenda. And this was as he met with permanent secretaries led by the head of service of the Federation at the State House in Abuja.
It gave us an opportunity to have a chat with Mr. President. The permanent secretaries had been wanting an opportunity to have some time with Mr. President, and this gave a very, very good opportunity. And Mr. President also used the opportunity to charge the permanent secretaries to redouble their efforts to ensure that the renewed hope agenda becomes a reality. Mr. President has given us a double march order to ensure that all the projects, all the programs that are domiciled in the ministries become a reality to Nigerian citizens. And the permanent secretaries also have given him the reassurance that that's why they're there, that they are his foot soldiers in the ministries and that they would work there tirelessly.
Okay, seems we have a correspondent now. Bernard, if you're there, kindly respond.
I can hear you loud and clear, Debola. Good evening.
All right. Can you describe the atmosphere there of the late Governor Rotimi Akeredolu's funeral?
Okay, I would say it was a very solemn atmosphere to start with. The crowd there was humbling, to use that adjective. There was a huge crowd outside in the premises of the cathedral and outside the premises of the cathedral as well, the Cathedral Church of St. Andrew. And then inside the church, there was even difficulties with crowd control, but the people in there were quite solemn and sad that Aketi, as he was fondly called, was going to be laid to rest. It was quite a huge turnout, but I would say the atmosphere there was quite solemn, basically because people were sad. Basically, Aketi was a governor that, according to most of people from Ondo State, what they have said is that they really did appreciate what he did, and they were touched and quite sad that his death came at such an unexpected time.
But what are some of the most touching tributes you have, heard so far regarding the late governor during the service?
Could you kindly take that question again?
Okay, I was asking, the most touching tributes paid so far to the late governor during the service.
Well, I think the most touching tribute I got was the fact that he was called a governor talk and do. A good number of people who were, not many people spoke during the service on the pulpit, but those who were speaking in the church kept on saying things like whatever he said, he actually did. And a lot of that was obvious in his hometown of Owo, where you could see a lot of the roads there had been tarred, street lights were functional, markets well in place. He did a lot in his hometown, but in the state in general, particularly in the capital of Akure, which coincidentally you are from. And then, apart from the capital as well, there are bridges that he's been working on, flyovers, and roads particularly, largely infrastructural development, I would like to say. And that's why they called him talk and do. And I think that was the most touching for me. Truly, in government, there are not many government leaders that people speak so highly about, whether during life or at death. But for Governor Rotimi Akeredolu, the case was different. A lot of people said a lot of good things about him, particularly the fact that what he said, he actually saw through and he did.
Well, indeed, Bernard, I am from Akure. If you can, just give us a glimpse as to dignitaries who were present at the service and also their reactions.
It was a litany of dignitaries, if I can use that word as well. To start with, leading the pack was the president himself, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was ably represented by his vice, Kashim Shettima. There was also the chairman of the All Progressives Congress, national chairman, talking about Dr. Ganduje himself, and then governors, governor of Lagos State, governor of Bayelsa State, Enugu State, Delta State, Edo State, of Osun State, of Oyo State. It was a whole list, an entire lineup. And then there were also past governors who were equally there. Gbenga Daniels was there, and a few others. And of course, we know that the late governor himself was a senior advocate of Nigeria. So some of his classmates at the law school, and then lawyers and SAENs as well, including Femi Falana, most renowned. And then, of course, members of the State House of Assembly here, National House of Assembly. It was a whole turnout of major dignitaries in the country. As a matter of fact, the church itself, at some point, could not contain the number of dignitaries and and invited guests that came to attend. And many of them, of course, in solemn mood, felt bad that one of their colleagues had fallen, basically. But such is life. It was a huge turnout and a time, I think, for all of them as well to reflect on government and governance in the country.
All right, let's take a moment to talk about the host community itself. I mean, how have they reacted to the passing of the late governor? And also, what impact do you think are they saying he had on the state of Ondo during his tenure?
It's a huge impact they say he had. If you remember, we were here when he passed, or when his passing was announced last year, December. And the people we spoke to then, first of all, showered encomiums on the late governor, first of all, for security. If you remember, the governor was one of those who spearheaded the establishment of the Southwestern Security Group known as Amotekun. And because of that, they said that the issues they were having with herdsmen attacking their community had reduced significantly. If you remember as well that even in that Owo town, there was an attack on a church, if you remember sometime, I think 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, and scores of people or tens of people were killed actually. But they say that things could have gotten worse in the state if not for the intervention of the governor and others who came around to invest in Amotekun as some kind of local but structured security apparatus in the state. Also, they talk about his, as I mentioned earlier, sometime earlier, his investment in infrastructural development, construction of flyovers, of roads, of electricity, lighting the streets, and so many other things. And the fact that he also, these things in one way or the other have been encouraging businesses from outside the states to come into the state. And they are only hoping that, the new governor who's taking over from him, that's Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa, who used to be his deputy, will be able to consolidate on the gains that Akeredolu has built. He had large shoes to fill, and they basically just hope that the new governor will be able to fill those shoes and to go above and beyond from where Akeredolu stopped. Well,
we understand the funeral service was held at St. Andrew's Church in Owo. What can you tell us about the significance of this location to the late governor?
Yes, well, the funeral, yes, was indeed held at St. Andrew's Church. Apparently, that was the church where the governor used to attend before he passed. Owo, as mentioned earlier, is the governor's hometown. And so, you know, that church was quite significant because it's a church where he used to be a member, not just a member. It was stated there at the funeral service that he was a very active member of the church. He donated and contributed a lot to the church in terms of, you know, physical infrastructure and in terms of his own time as well. He used to come as regularly as he possibly could, knowing that he had a very tight schedule as a governor. But he always ensured that whatever the church needed, he provided to the best of his capacity. And going further on that, you know, the officiating pastor or preachers in the church did say that before the governor passed, he was working on a diagnostic center in Owo, and they were hoping that the governors and other delegates, or rather and other dignitaries who attended his funeral would help to contribute to make that dream you know, come true, because we're going to name it after the late governor. So yeah, very, very significant that particular church was in hosting his funeral, because you know, it was his hometown church basically, where he always attended whenever he was home.
All right, thank you so much, Bernard Akpata, our correspondent, right there live in Edo State.
Thank you for having me.
Well, once again, our deepest condolences to the families and friends of the late governor, Rotimi Akeredolu. Now, moving on to another story. The Nigerian government is interacting with critical sectors to ensure there is no exportation of liquefied petroleum gas, also known as cooking gas. The government said this is part of its efforts to tackle the rise in price of cooking gas in the country. Ikechukwu Ekpo, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, made this known at an internal stakeholders workshop in Abuja. The minister notes that the workshop is aimed at repositioning the Nigerian gas sector for optimal performance, in line with President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda to unlock the country's abundant gas resources for economic development and poverty eradication. He said this is an incentive. The government has withdrawn all taxes and levies from the importation of gas-related equipment. Earlier, Chuks Emeka, oil and gas consultant, as well as a public affairs analyst, spoke to us on these developments.
Nigeria is not refining. And as far as we are not refining, it's invariably going to affect how the supply and distribution of gas is going to happen in the country. Now, why it is paramount that government shuts down exports is that the price of gas in this country is skyrocketing every day. And Nigeria has large quantity of deposits in billions of cubic meters of gas reserves. In a country of this nature, what should have been our primary focus, that is the reason why I said in one of the interviews I had, is that the Ministry of Gas is doing quite little or nothing in exploiting the potentials in the gas industry. I don't understand why that ministry was created, yet we are not seeing potentials. The issue of gas is not only in the sale of gas. It's actually in the usage. Gas can be used to be able to do a lot of things in this country. Gas can be used to be able to generate more components and generate also more jobs.
Pioneer President of ECOWAS Commission, Mohamed Chambers, has urged the bloc's leaders to lift sanctions slammed on Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger Republic following military coups in the countries. Chambers, currently the African Union's High Representative for Silencing the Guns in Africa, made a call on Friday. Speaking ahead of the ECOWAS summit slated for Abuja during the weekend, he also called on Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger military leaders to withdraw their threats to exit from the sub-regional bloc. And this, he said, is to call on all stakeholders in the West African sub-region to heed the recent call of former Nigerian head of state, Yakubu Gowon, to end the prevailing conflict and unite the people in the area. President Bola Tinubu has reaffirmed his commitment as the chairman of the authority of ECOWAS heads of state and government to advancing judicial reforms with determined support. The Nigerian president emphasized the accountability of the judicial system as a way to strengthen democracy across West Africa. The president made these remarks at a meeting with a delegation from the ECOWAS Judicial Council led by Justice Olukayode Ariwola, Chief Justice of Nigeria, and the chairman of the council at the State House in Abuja. And speaking on behalf of the ECOWAS Judicial Council, Justice Ariwola emphasized the council's commitment to facilitating the effective functioning of the ECOWAS judicial system.
Has been having its meeting at the Council Hall of the National Judicial Council since Tuesday. And that's why we plan to visit Mr. President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. And we were granted the honor to make this visit to appraise His Excellency about what transpired at our meeting. We plan to submit our recommendations to the authority when we conclude our meeting.
In the same vein, the council chairman reacted to Nigeria's Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi's call on the ECOWAS Court of Justice to refrain from issuing orders and judgments that were impossible to enforce. The council said it is combing its extant laws and reviewing the level of implementation of its past rulings by member states.
Of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, gave that as part of his speech at the opening session on Tuesday. And that is part of my remarks to Mr. President also this morning, that the issue on the enforcement of the judgments of the community court is going to be looked into. We've set up two committees, one to look into the rules and the other to look into the position or the status of the enforcement of judgments of the community court. And as I told Mr. President, by the time the council concludes its meeting, the recommendations will show that we have worked so hard to support.
The Defense Headquarters says troops of the Nigerian military recorded tremendous success by neutralizing 286 terrorists, arrested 244 suspected terrorists, and rescued 122 kidnapped hostages in various operations in the last 1 week. Director of Defense Media Operations, Edward Buba, made this known while addressing journalists on the ongoing operations by the armed forces and other security agencies at the Defense Headquarters in Abuja. He said troops also recovered 587 assorted weapons and 7,943 assorted ammunition in the period under review. Troops in Niger Delta also arrested 83 oil thieves, discovered and destroyed 74 illegal refining sites containing 134 dugout pits, 79 boats, 116 storage tanks, and 149 cooking ovens.
We have eliminated several terrorists. We have eliminated several of their leaders, and we have eliminated several of their commanders, and will continue to do so. We are continually going after the terrorists and will continually dislodge them from their hideouts. It is clear that in spite of all this, more needs to be done to win the war. And this more that needs to be done to win the war needs to be done outside just the use of military pressure.
You're live with News Central TV. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying tuned. The chairman and chief executive officer of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Buba Marwa, says poverty is the major cause of drug abuse and drug addiction in Nigeria and other nations in the world. He made this known in Yola while inspecting the ultra-modern office and barracks under construction for officers and men of the agency. Marwa also said most people who take drugs do it to take away the stress of economic pressure.
In the process, we found that poverty is the key determinant of drug use in all societies, not Nigeria. So it's important that it's not only Nigeria that has this problem, but the world over. Poverty is a key determinant because with poverty, you are frustrated, you don't have a job, you want a temporary relief, and the people find drugs. It is for this reason that the president, I know, is determined to move Nigeria.
As more Nigerians choose the japa in search of greener pastures, we are beginning to see a shift in traditional family dynamics and cultural norms, from long-distance parenting to the challenge of preserving cultural heritage. Nigerian parents in the diaspora say raising children abroad is challenging. News Centre's Molola Ololade tells us more.
Torn between two cultures, many African parents face daunting and challenging tasks raising children abroad. For such Nigerians living in the diaspora, they agree that raising their kids come with many benefits such as quality education and optimal health care, amongst others. But the culture of the society gives enormous powers to the child, which for them creates a huge dilemma.
Now we're raising kids who want to question everything, want to know why you're doing this or why you're asking them to do that, or why there's a need for this or there's a need for that. That's a big challenge. This is a big challenge. There's also the issue of community, or a lack of it, as we know here in the UK.
In Nigeria, you could spank a child. Even if you go to the police station, the police will help you spank the child. So, but in this climb, it's not that. If you spank a child here, you're done. In fact, you lose your child. The government is one of the major problems we have. They've made laws such that you can't even scold your child.
Like many immigrant groups, Nigerians are keen to preserve their cultural identity and ensure their children do not replace their traditional values with foreign ideas, but protecting their cultural identities remain a struggle. Sociologists, however, emphasize the importance of instilling family values in their children, regardless of whether they live in the diaspora or not.
It's possible that parents do not or did not really know how to impact this value system in their children. Maybe your choice of language. If your choice of language is wrong, they will not connect. Everybody now embrace japa. They have to go to seek greener pasture. I tell them that it's not about the education alone. It's not about exposing them to the other to the world beyond them alone, but it has to do a lot with their interpersonal relationship skill. It has to do with the value. It has to do with their retaining their culture.
As African-born parents continue to find ways of preserving their cultures in a foreign land, the jury is out as to how successful their effort will be. In Lagos, for News Central, Omolola Ololade.
And coming up, United Nations says horrific human rights violations amount to war crimes in Sudan. We have details shortly. Stay with us. Some residents of Senegal's capital, Dakar, have shared their views on President Macky Sall after he said his mandate would end as planned on April 2nd. They urged the president to announce a new election date. However, the president, during a television interview, did not announce a revised date for the election, but called for talks to decide on the date.
Les enjeux qu'il attend sur l'après-élection, le président l'a su mesurer. Voyez, en quoi faisant, c'est-à-dire il veut la paix. Il veut la paix dans ce Sénégal, qu'on l'a légué. Hein? Il veut aussi le léguer à un autre avec la paix. Donc nous voulons la paix au Sénégal. On ne connaît pas des troublements et des comment dirais-je, ce qu'on voit dans la sous-région. Que Dieu nous préserve.
Je crois bien que tous les Sénégalais ont eu du bon cœur. Alors, après les déclarations, beaucoup de gens ont trouvé que le président a donné les mots justes. Et surtout, il s'est appesanti sur l'apaisement social, la paix sociale. Parce que quand il n'y a pas la paix, personne ne peut vaquer à ses occupations.
gëm naa ne comme conseil constitutionnel waxoon na ñi war a bokk ci élection yi ñi nga xam ne war na noo bokk ñooñu rek la war na bàyyi ñu dem bu fi defaatee ay dialogue boobu du am sens li am solo mooy mu organiser élection yi ñu wote que le meilleur gagne ki yàlla jox réew mi ñu xam ne kii la mais di nekk di defaat ay dialogue yooyu moo amul sens franchement fi ñu ko doon xaar daal génn foofu.
Up north, Tunisian Imam Majoub Majobi, expelled from France for alleged hate speech, says he will do everything he can to return to France. The 52-year-old was arrested and then deported to Tunisia on February 22nd, where he arrived shortly before midnight aboard a flight from Paris.
La loi de l'immigration, elle a été votée à peu près il y a 3 semaines. Eh bien, je suis la première victime de cette loi, tout simplement. Ma famille aujourd'hui, ma famille, elle est seule en France, mon épouse, mes enfants, comme je le disais, 5 enfants mineurs, un enfant qui est malade d'un cancer. Ils sont seuls. Je suis la seule ressource de vie pour mes enfants, parce qu'aujourd'hui, ma société, elle est complètement menacée. Hein, d'ici une semaine, 10 jours, 1 mois ou plus tard, donc je ne pense pas qu'elle va tenir. Eh bien, je vais tout faire pour regagner la France et être auprès des miens. C'est de l'impossible que je puisse être loin de ma famille, séparé de ma famille. Il y a une justice. Je crois à la justice française. J'ai confiance en cette justice, dont M. Darmanin s'est emparé, bien sûr, en sachant qu'il y a la séparation des pouvoirs. Et puis voilà, on va se défendre. Mon but, c'est de revenir auprès de ma famille, de ma femme et de mes enfants.
Malawi's Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Simplex Chithiola Banda, has taken center stage as he introduces the planned 2024-25 national budget, raising optimism among Malawians seeking respite from the country's difficult economic situation. This is Banda's first complete fiscal plan following his presentation of a mid-year budget review statement in November 2023 after succeeding Sosen Gwengwe. During pre-budget presentation, stakeholders expressed their expectations that the financial plan would incorporate their feedback and align with President Lazarus Chakwera's State of the Nation address, which was delivered earlier this month. Meanwhile, Malawi's economy remains significantly weakened by recurrent external shocks combined with macro-fiscal imbalances. And to talk about these, I'm joined live on the news by Dr. Bertha Chijakza, acting President of Economics Association of Malawi. Good evening from here.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you join me.
Thank you.
Now, what are your thoughts on the budget speech delivered by the Minister of Finance? What are the highlights or takeaways from that speech?
All right. The key takeaways are that, as expected, we wanted the budget to align itself to the State of the Nation address, which the President actually delivered 2 weeks ago. And exactly like that, it happened. So it has aligned itself to the Malawi investment plan, but also the State of the Nation address. So it ensures inclusive growth and also, achieving economic resilience. We've also noted for the first time that the budget has 30% allocated to development, which is something new, because basically we've seen it to be less than 30%. And we've also seen, some deliberate measures to enhance domestic revenue mobilization through broadening of non-tax revenues. And also we've seen something that, a focus on highly productive sectors, which in the SONA, they were termed ATM, the sectors of agriculture, tourism, and mining. So we have actually seen some measures that, are trying to boost the agriculture sector, also making the mega farms, which have been touted recently, to be like those strategies for export, because I think they have, the country signed some agreements with China to be exporting some legumes. So the mega farms actually are for that. And also tourism, we've seen some efforts in removing, visa requirements for some 70-something countries. And the issues of even mining, we've seen that the country has actually established, the mining company of Malawi. So, and this is also in the, I think, under the Malawi Development Corporation. So these are some of the highlights that we've seen, that they're trying to bring the economy on track. And also issues of maybe, trying to reduce importation of fertilizer by trying to setting up a company in the country to be manufacturing fertilizer. So if you know that the country has been experiencing some foreign exchange shortages, and we were expecting the budget to at least put in some measures to reduce, demand for foreign exchange. And some of those, we have seen them, because we've seen that the budget has also put some restrictions in trying to limit some of the imported things that, your consumers do buy. For example, maybe some finished products which could otherwise been produced at home. So they are encouraging actually to import raw materials which can boost the manufacturing sector. So these are some of the things that I think the budget has highlighted, are trying to boost the revenue by increasing non-tax revenue, and also, gazetting some laws in terms of mining, specifically just to boost the mining sector, the tourism, the agriculture. I think something that we were expecting but didn't happen is the reduction of the agricultural input products, touted the AIP, which is free distribution, or maybe paying a little for some agricultural inputs. So we've seen that, especially with the current situation where the country is experiencing El Nino, that distribution didn't work. And if El Nino or climate change issues like this continue, the country will not benefit with AIP. So we were thinking that maybe the government would shift so many resources from AIP, maybe to climate smart agriculture or to mega farms. So in highlights, I think I can say those are the key issues that we've seen from the budget, and it was, giving hope to Malawians upon seeing that it walked almost the same walk or the same tone that the State of the Nation address gave the Malawians. Thank you.
All right. I know you talked about, the focus of the budget being on tourism, like you mentioned, being on mining, and also being on boosting the economy. Of course, you mentioned an exception when it comes to agriculture. But then how do you think these will impact inflation as well as unemployment in Malawi?
All right. If you have a look at the inflation, in Malawi, it is, made up of the food inflation, but also imported inflation. And the food inflation contributes largely, to the basket of inflation. And so by trying to invest in mega farming, so we're trying to bring in food to a lot of the people in Malawi. And by making food available, we know that prices will not rise. So by turning the price of food, we will know that we'll be managing the inflation, inflationary pressures that actually come with food. And like I said, that also there is a larger percentage that comes from imported inflation. And so, as I said, we've seen some measures that they're saying they'll be producing fertilizer. In that case, it means that the imported inflation that comes with agricultural inputs, because agricultural inputs actually are the number one on the Malawian imports. So if we try to reduce those ones, then we know that we'll be controlling this imported inflation and also putting in spanners in the wheels of those people who import a lot, especially finished products which could otherwise be produced here. We are also trying to reduce that, reducing the number of imports, but also trying to contain the imported inflation.
And
so yes,
they walk
the talk with this budget. To me, I think, yeah, they will actually try to control the inflation that the country
and
is
that's the most we can take on the news. Thank you so much for your insight, Dr. Betha. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
In the east of the continent, UN Human Rights Office says the armed conflict in Sudan has resulted in thousands of civilians being killed, and the violations committed during the conflict would amount to war crimes. UN rights spokesperson Saif Magango made it known during a bi-weekly press briefing in Geneva while speaking from Nairobi, Kenya.
Fatalities now stand at least 14,000. For numbers, we have information to the effect that the fatalities now stand at least 14,600 people who have been killed during this conflict. These figures have been collected by an organization that we believe to be credible, the Armed Conflict Location.
The Nigerian Senate is investigating a 30 trillion naira loan obtained by the former Buhari administration from the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. An ad hoc committee has been formed to scrutinize disbursement and usage of controversial loan, which was facilitated through the CBN's Ways and Means mechanism. Concerns have been raised about the potential impact of this borrowing on the economy and, of course, public finances. Kalu Arja, certified financial educator, shared his thought on this and if this is sanity and probity returning to the public sector during an appearance on the Business Edge show.
30 trillion is made up of the borrowings from the past administration because the current administration has borrowed about 7 trillion and has added to that debt. So I think it's the way to say, listen, this was made up of the past debt of 23 trillion, and we have added about 7 currently. That's what I think is going on. But I like it that they are looking back to ask what happened to all that money. If you convert that to dollars, about $50 billion that was maybe given to the government by the CBN through Ways and Means. So we must ask that question. Where did the money go to? What was it used for?
And now to sports stories. African champions South Africa defeated Tanzania 3-0 away from home in the first leg of the Paris 2024 Olympics qualifiers on Friday. It took only 10 minutes for the Bayana to open the scoring through Jermaine Sopuswene. 12 minutes into the second half, Desiree Ellis' side doubled the lead courtesy of 2018 CAF Women's Player of the Year, Thembi Kathala. Hilda Magai sealed the win with a third goal in the 86th minute of play. The return fixture will take place on Monday, February 27, 2024. Should they go expectedly through, Cameroon or Nigeria awaits them in the fourth and final round of the qualifiers. Canadian-born Ghanaian right-back Richie Laye has rejoined hometown club Toronto FC ahead of start of the new MLS season. The 29-year-old signed a deal that will keep him in Toronto FC until 2026 with the option of a further year. The Canada international ends his spell with Premier League side Nottingham Forest after a torrid period in England. Laurier, who joined Nottingham Forest from Toronto FC in 2022, spent most of his time on loan, returning to Toronto midway through 2022 before spending time in Vancouver Whitecaps. Russia's appeal against the International Olympic Committee's decision to suspend its membership has been dismissed by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The IOC suspended the Russian Olympic Committee with immediate effect in October for a breach of the Olympic Charter. The ROC recognized regional organizations from 4 Ukrainian territories, illegally annexed by Russia since its full-scale invasion began in February 2022. The suspension by the IOC means the ROC is no longer entitled to operate as a national Olympic committee. In December, the IOC announced that Russian and Belarusian athletes who have qualified for the Paris 2024 Olympics will be allowed to participate as neutrals. The conditions of their inclusion include competing without flags, emblems, or anthems of their country. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. Okpebholo has been declared winner of Edo APC governorship primary election as former NBA president Olumide Akpata got Labour Party's ticket. Pressure is mounting on President Macky Sall to confirm election date. And we told you that United Nations says horrific human rights violations amount to war crimes in Sudan. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adeduba.